Welcome to episode 357 of School Librarians United. I'm your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian in my 19th year, I knew I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is a perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, my interview guests, and listeners who reach out to the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources. So whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast has something for you. I welcome you and all listeners to reach out with your feedback and episode suggestions. You can reach me on Facebook, on X, formerly known as Twitter. My handle is at @LMS_United. On Threads and Instagram, you can find me at School Librarians United, on Blue Sky at SLU Podcast, or the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, I'll be sure to send you a podcast sticker. Today's episode centers around a terrific book, School Libraries Supporting Students with Hidden Needs and Talents, authored by Karla Collins and published by Bloomsbury. I reached out to Bloomsbury and they very generously offered a 20% discount to anyone using the promotion code UNITED20. That's 20% off the original price using the code UNITED20. See the link in today's show notes. And now for today's episode, School Libraries Supporting Students with Hidden Needs and Talents, and my conversation with author Karla Collins. Friends, I'm so excited. Karla Collins, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
Friends, Karla and I have a friend in common, Maura Madigan. Thank you very much for introducing me to Karla and Karla's book that she wrote. And so we're really in for a great conversation. I was enthralled with reading about school librarians and what we can do to support all of our students and their hidden needs and talents. So Karla Collins, would you please go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us about your work and what you do in the field of school librarianship.
Sure. So I currently teach people to be school librarians. After a long career of being a school librarian myself, being a classroom teacher in a variety of levels, I finally got the degree I needed to be able to teach people to do the job that I love. So that's where I am. I'm teaching people to do the work.
So forgive me, you have a PhD. And may I ask, where in the country, geographically, from whence do you hail?
I live in Virginia. I attended all my school in Virginia, so I've kind of covered the state. If you're familiar with Virginia, I grew up in Blacksburg, home of the Hokies, but did not go there. Instead, I went to 3 other schools in Virginia in order to get all my degrees. But yes, I do have a PhD in curriculum and instruction.
I love that. As a school librarian, you come at this with a rather unique perspective, because I think the expectation is that educators merge into this space with that PhD. But as somebody with as much training as you have in being a school librarian and experience, that's fantastic. So can I ask, what course do you teach for rising school librarians?
I teach a number of the courses in our program. Collection development is one that I've taught almost every semester since I've been at Longwood University. This is year 14 for me at Longwood. The longest I've been anywhere in my career, by the way. Collection development is one I've taught from the beginning. I teach children's literature. I teach young adult literature. We have a curriculum and instruction class that I teach. We also have a series of classes for our students who are in the initial licensure track. Again, it's a curriculum an instruction course for them. That my love, I think, is in teaching people to be great teachers. It just so happens that I do it in the realm of school librarianship.
I have been thoroughly enjoying your book, School Libraries Supporting Students with Hidden Needs and Talents. Your introduction, you said, quote, "I wanted this book to be written through the lens of a school librarian so it would be meaningful to the audience." I am so grateful when somebody centers the work that they're doing on the important work that we do as school librarians.
I went back and forth with this as I was framing the book. because I felt like maybe I don't know everything I need to know about all of the different specialists that I'm going to talk about in the book. Maybe I'm not the best person to write about all of these needs and talents of the students that I'm going to write about in the book. So I thought maybe I should edit the book and have other people who are actually experts in those fields do the writing. But what you just quoted is really what I came down to. If I do the research and I find out from those other people what I should be saying about those different specialists in the school and about those different needs and talents of the students, then I could write it so school librarians in particular could really resonate with what was being said. So instead, I wrote what I thought was right, and then I reached out to a bunch of friends and colleagues to get their feedback. I went to a career and technical education teacher that I used to work with, and I sent her my section about career and technical educators. And I asked for her feedback, and she gave me some great feedback and said, maybe you don't want to be quite as harsh about this. Maybe you want to reframe that a little bit. So, things like that. So I'm very grateful to the many people who helped me as I was writing those sections.
I'm always grateful for the opportunity to read a book which is directed towards the very group of people that I have wanted to support in this podcast, which are school librarians. And I love that when you have done this, you have made sure to put us in the same context as the other specialists who are supporting our students. And I'll be completely honest, I don't know if I'd ever identified myself as a specialist. And I am, right? So, on page 24, you talked about school librarians being part of the interprofessional team approach. And that is vitally important when you realize that it is a team approach. When we look at the students that we support, we obviously have those, teachers, those classroom teachers who are seeing this same group of students day in and day out. But then you get the specialists like ourselves who are working together to enhance and support these students from a multitude of different directions with the particular angles that we come out in terms of the skills that we can bring and the kinds of things we can enhance in the students that we work with. But I had never really thought of this as we are part of a larger team of specialists.
So the phrase interprofessional team comes actually out of the health profession, where a lot of things we do in education come out of the health profession. A lot of great things come from there. I became familiar with it when it was presented at a meeting here at Longwood. Somebody had gone to a conference and learned about this interprofessional team, interprofessional education, where people who are preparing people to be professionals, we teach them interprofessional skills to work with each other, to build on everybody else's strengths in the health professions to give the best care to the patients. At Longwood, we decided to add education into that interprofessional education piece. And so when we have interprofessional education events on campus, we have education majors included. So we have physical therapy who come from another university. We have speech therapists. We have kinesiology, all kinds of different professions coming to this interprofessional education meeting and learning from each other about each other and about their lens of how they can provide the best care to the families, the clients, the students, the patients, whoever it is that we're dealing with. I see it as collaboration on steroids. It's just collaboration with a lot of people involved, doing the best to bring the best to those that we're serving.
Well, and I know we're going to talk about this eventually, but Chapter 5 is my favorite. Chapter 5 is absolutely my favorite because it goes into detail about all the specialists in this sort of constellation, a constellation of specialists, and how we all work together in this team approach to support our students. And I just like the fact that I'm one of those specialists. So we're definitely going to go into detail in Chapter 5. In Chapter 2, you wrote on universal design for learning. And you wrote, we need to stop projecting our source of joy onto others. Instead, it is time we start finding ways to welcome all students without the pressure and expectations. And, UDL is something we are really well prepared to provide because of the space that we create to support all of our students. But I really had not thought of this about what I was doing in terms of projecting, what it is that brings us joy. But I was hoping you could explain a little bit more about what you meant.
That probably is the section of the book that I was most worried about writing. Not the UDL part, but the sentence that you quoted, because I think that it refers to a section where I talk about what we say as librarians and how we expect everybody who comes into the library to be a reader, and they're not. So just because we love reading and because we get information from reading doesn't mean that everybody who comes in the library is going to get that same joy from what we like. And I think the example that I put in the book was when we say, "What do you mean you don't like reading? You just haven't found the right book yet." I have 2 self-described non-readers in my house who have made it into their mid-20s with few problems, but they still say that they're non-readers, that they don't read. They get their information from other places, but they also didn't walk into a library unless I made them because they didn't feel welcome there, because whoever was there was saying, "You haven't done something right. You don't like reading, so something you did is not right. So why do you want to go back to a place where that's what you're told?" So I put that in the book, even though I knew it might be controversial in school library land, but I felt like it needed to be in there.
I think it's so important to remember that for all the good that we can do with regularly being front-facing with our students, we have to be so incredibly cognizant that there are students for whom they don't feel welcome. And our job is to make sure that there is an opportunity for them to identify with something in our space that we can provide that would bring them an opportunity to connect with the space. Because if they're spending any amount of time there, it may not be the books. It may be some of the passive programming, or it might be that you have a therapy dog who's there. It might be that you have an activity or a center that you do with the students. The library is as much a collection of books as it is the family room of the school, the place where students come. It is an opportunity for them to explore the things that interest them, whether they are between the covers of a book or in a basket or a bin or a display or something that you put on a bulletin board. And, it's our job to make as many avenues for them to find that way to interest themselves. For me, it was, I've got to tell you, it was nonfiction. I love nonfiction. And it was very interesting because I didn't consider myself a reader, but I devoured entries in encyclopedias, and I had one of these massive sort of single volume encyclopedias at home, and I would just flip open to a page and start learning. And I loved it. But it's not like I read chapter after chapter after chapter. And no, I completely agree. We have to be very cautious in how we welcome our students into that space and make sure that all of our students feel welcome. Central to this book is recognizing the team which supports the students, and we as specialists are part of that collective effort.
We absolutely are. We are the specialists who know a little bit about everything and know where to find more information. But the main thing we need to know is who to contact. There are so many people within our school who have specialties. Why shouldn't we be reaching out to them? They're working with those same students. They see them in a completely different setting, and they see different things. When students came to my library, I saw them acting and doing things differently than the classroom teacher saw. The PE teacher saw different things, saw different behaviors, different actions, different intelligences coming out in the students in that different setting. So if we can pull all of that together, then we can better educate those individual students. I don't know where I would have been, especially in an elementary school library, without those other specialists that were in the school with me. Now, as I was writing this section of the book, what I discovered was all of these specialists have their own sets of standards. They all have a professional association. They all are working towards very similar goals as what we're working towards. Why not? We should be working together.
Well, and I found that those opportunities when we got together as a PLC, and it was interesting because you'd get like these grade level teams, and the grade level teams would break up, and the grade level teams would break up, and the subject matter would, in the high school, they'd break up and they'd meet together as a PLC. But as an elementary librarian, I was part of the specials. And it is interesting when you share the same students, it's remarkable how much you have in common, even though the context in which we work with those students is so incredibly different.
Yeah. And I think in one of the schools where I worked, I was in the ideal specials situation where while it wasn't ideal to have students 6 classes a day, 5 days a week, I had common planning with all the other specialists. We had common planning and lunch back to back. So we sat together and had lunch together every day, talked about what we were doing with the students. We did some amazing collaborations that I kind of outline a little bit in the book. We were able to meet the needs of those students and the teachers so much better because we were such a functional team.
I think that we are incredibly versatile professionals because we've worked with all the age groups. It doesn't matter where we are, in which school. We have had to work with, and it's interesting because if you've ever talked to grade level teachers, you hear like, oh, I love first grade. I couldn't stand working with third graders. I love first grader. Or, Amy, you don't know how hard it is to work with second graders. You're like, I teach second graders every day. But I also teach kindergartners. I teach first graders. I teach third graders. I teach fourth graders. I teach fifth graders. I teach the sixth graders. When you have a K-12 certification, we have had to get used to the idea that we are going to be good at teaching all the ages, and forgive me, the teachers who work with them. And so, I think one of the reasons why I know I became a librarian was I wasn't happy with being, and I know I'm going to annoy somebody by saying this, I did not want to be limited to the impact I could create with the students in my classroom. I loved what I could do when I stepped outside my classroom during passing, and I could connect with the special education teacher across the hall from me, with my team of teachers, and then the other teachers that I sat across from the table with during lunch, and we started to talk about it. All of a sudden, I derived just as much satisfaction supporting them in the classes they were teaching, and working with the students we had in common, irrespective of the grade levels they were or the subjects that they taught. And that was one of the first indicators that I knew I really should be a school librarian, because a school librarian does that every day and gets to. And so I think that when you become a school librarian, you are already moving into a space where you acknowledge you are going to work with all the grades. You're going to work with all the teachers. You're going to work with all the administrators, because your job is to support the school community. And that means you're going to be in a position to benefit everybody you encounter.
I completely agree with everything you said. Yeah, and that's why I did it. Technically, I became a school librarian because that's the first job I got. My plan was to be a classroom teacher, but the first job was in the school library. But in the library, I got to do the part of teaching that I really loved. I got to make those connections at the middle school and high school levels. I was able to see, okay, the English teacher is doing this. The art teacher is doing this. Why don't those two get together and do some cross-curricular things, which they may not have seen. At the elementary level, it's a little bit different because the classroom teacher usually teaches, all the subjects. But when you get up to the secondary classes, that's not the case. And they don't necessarily go out of their department to see what's being taught in other areas. So I loved being able to be that connection and opening up that range of possibilities, opening up, okay, here are some places where you all can work together. So come on in the library. It's a big old space where everybody can be in here together and we can accomplish some really great things.
Well, and I know I've said that before because I document who I work with every day because every day is different. And I've said, I've connected people who had things in common, whether it was the students they were teaching or these threads of concepts that were being taught in one class and also being touched upon in another subject matter. And, oh, you should be talking to this person. And, recognizing very quickly that if you are a subject teacher or a grade level teacher, it is very easy to find yourself, pigeonholed, really drilling down on, being that expert in content and in grade level and not being nearly as familiar with people who are teach on the other side of the building with other grade levels and other subject matters. It is both a very daunting and wonderful realization when you get to work with everybody. On page 55, something you wrote really landed with me. Quote, how can school librarian instruction meet the needs of the learners and the teachers in your school community? And it's such an enormous question that you ask. And I sort of wrestled with it. I was like, well, of course, I can answer this question. And I was like, okay, that's why I'm reading this book. It's a really big idea. Like, what are we doing on a daily basis to support the needs of both the students in our school and the teachers in our school? I think that looks different depending on the grades that you're working with and the subjects that you're supporting. But sometimes these are big ways that we can have that kind of impact. And in other ways, sometimes they may seem insignificant, but it really does change what teachers are able to do with their kids when you realize, especially when we can match resources with the teachers and the things that they're doing in their classroom.
Yeah, and it's the whole school community. I think it's an important question to ask yourself frequently. What's going on in my school and what can I do to help? How can I support them? How can I provide better instruction? Or what is it that they need in second grade right now? What materials can I get in and what can I add to what they're already doing in the classroom? It's also, how can I be a team player in the school? Do I want to be on car line duty? No, probably not. But I can contribute to the school. I can be a team player and I can get to know those students and their parents. And I can make connections and invite them into the library and use that to build advocates for the library program.
Yes, I've compared this to when I became the keeper of the laminator.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, I'm the keeper of the laminator and one of only a few printing centers. So we have these sort of massive print stations, and one of them has been in the space where I work. And on the one hand, you're like, you stop even hearing it go because it's always running, and then the laminator, and you're like, it interrupts what I'm doing, and yet I'm also in a place where I can knock these kinds of jobs out without waste and without taking too much time. But it also gives me a behind the scenes as to what the teachers are doing. I was like, oh, what is this teacher doing? And I feel like a nosy Nelly, and I don't care because all of a sudden I see something that's going on in the classroom, and in my head, I'm like, I've got about 4 things I'd like to send them that I know would help them right now. I know even with our testing coordinator, we have a brand new testing coordinator, and they didn't know anything about all the AP resources that we have on the webpage I built. And so, it was kind of fun because I was talking to the testing coordinator. I'm like, I I think I need to share something with you. And then within 5 minutes, the testing coordinator had taken the resources I had shared with them and then pushed it out to every AP teacher we have and said, hey, have you seen these resources that Amy has, both in the library in print and through the state of Michigan, and the resources on her webpage? And I was like, oh my goodness, look at what the librarian did because I chose to talk to our new testing coordinator. I mean, it was great. It was like, oh, go me.
Yeah. Those are good moments, aren't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Friends, I'm sorry, but there is an element of self-preservation because if you can't tell people why you're important, we're in trouble, right? We're in really big trouble.
Well, and I also thought, I always felt like it was important for me to have in my mind how whatever I was doing at any point in my day was matched with the curriculum somewhere. In Virginia, we have standards of learning. Those are guiding documents for what is taught at every level. And I could rattle off if my students, if you walk through the library and you saw my students working on puzzles or putting together, cutting things and pasting things and whatever it was they were doing, I could tell you what their standards were that in the classroom that was helping meet. And, knowing what was going on in the classroom and being able to share that with people whenever they say, "Oh, you just let them play in here all the time." But by doing a puzzle, they're actually doing this, this, and this. So, it was really important to me to have that knowledge of the curriculum and knowledge of child development and know what they needed to be doing at different levels.
Chapter 5 is definitely my favorite because, again, we are specialists who work with other specialists. Chapter 5, though, does a fantastic job of identifying the myriad of specialists that we work with. It says, Chapter 5, school specialists as collaborative partners. And so you sort of go through all the many different specialists that we work with, and you do sort of in an alphabetical order. Of what,
course.
Yes, it is an alphabetical order, but you include basically their job description, but also the professional organizations that they would closely work with. And I think that's absolutely huge because, again, as specialists, we rely on our professional organizations to provide that kind of support that we do throughout the year. You also mention some language, which, for me, I feel it really is like if you're communicating with these specialists, it gives you foundationally a better appreciation for here is my English as a second language teacher. And I got to tell you, while none of that appeals to me as a professional, I am a better colleague and more useful to helping this person do their job because I will encounter them on a regular basis. And the more I appreciate and learn about what they do as a professional in my building, because we share the same students. So I absolutely love that. And, talking about reading specialists, in theory, I mean, there are a lot of us who might have become reading specialists if we hadn't become librarians. But again, that was never my path. And you've given us a really excellent background into what this person does and the specialty that they bring to our students. Special education teachers and speech language pathologists and school counselors and all of these specialists, including you've got your CTEs, your career and technical educators, you've got curriculum specialists. And that to me was something that I was like, no, maybe not. You've got your world language and fine arts, and as well as your health and PE teachers. Again, I love working with them because it's always a surprise to them that there's something I can do to help them do their jobs.
And they're always really grateful that you ask. The specialists don't get asked very often by very many people, what is it that you do? Or what are you doing in your classroom? And I would hear from so many, especially the middle school and high school again, especially those specialists who were so grateful that I just asked and was interested in what they were doing. Yeah, of course I'm interested because you're going to help me. And together, we're going to do some great things. And I also, in this section, I tried to give some ideas of collaborative lessons that you might do with some of these specialists. So if you are thinking about working with the school counselor, first of all, the school counselor should be your best friend because students are going to come to you in the library and tell you things that they would never, ever, ever tell anybody else. So you need to have a very close relationship with your school counselor. Throw that out there. But then, what are some lesson ideas? What are some things that you could do together that you could collaborate with and co teach? I had some great counselors that we did great fun things together. Good memories.
I'm having a lot of fun building out parts of my collection based on the issues that have come up in the conversations with the counselors and talking about lived experiences of our students and providing those windows and mirrors and sliding glass doors for our students to be able to read and identify with the characters and stories. And I always get a better appreciation for some of our students' lived experiences in the conversations that I have had with the counselors. And you might someday find yourself also becoming the online coordinator, in which case all of a sudden you're really going to be working with your counselors. And you know what? That's okay. I invited this chaos. I might have mentioned it a little bit earlier, but this year I became our school's online coordinator as well. And for many people, that's a very natural fit because in the high school, a lot of our students doing their online classes, that happens in our learning commons and our library spaces because it's in the middle of the day, in the middle of their schedule. But all of a sudden, I went from I'm talking to our counselors every once in a while to emailing them all the time. And I don't know about this. Another wonderful time to opportunity to collaborate with our counselors is when they're doing scheduling for the next year. And especially at like the high school level, when the kids are coming and they're registering for their classes, bringing them into a much larger space like our high school libraries has really been an opportunity for me to create a larger venue for our counselors to then meet with the classes that come down to do their scheduling for next term. And I'm not going to lie, March, I share the Learning Commons now with 4 counselors who will meet with approximately 970 kids over 3 weeks individually in our collaboration stations. And it's great. But, it also is an opportunity for me to get a more full appreciation of how those counselors navigate with the students that we share and how I can become a more important resource to them as they support their students.
And by doing that, you're building advocates for the library, and you're getting students in the library that would otherwise have no reason to come in there in their minds. But they're coming in there, they have a need that is being solved by coming into that library space, and just getting their feet in the door is a big step.
Well, and you better believe that that's the time I start pulling out all those carts and we start interspersing the carts of brand new books amongst the tables where the kids are waiting for their names to be called. And all of a sudden it was like, hey, friend, if you haven't seen our manga collection, I'd like to show you where that is. And we talk with the teacher and say, hey, if our friends, if there's anything you want to check out, now's a great time to do that because you're already here. And so, yes, there's an opportunity every time we bring those classes down to our libraries. Perhaps one of my favorite passages is also in Chapter 5, where you make the important distinction between our libraries being a safe space and our libraries being a brave space. And I'm hoping that you can explain to our listeners what you meant there.
And this, again, came from my counselor friends. And we were having a discussion about this very thing. And they said, well, we need to move beyond just a safe space because we had been saying for a long time, we want people to feel safe in the library. Yes, we do. We want them to feel safe in the library. But a safe space indicates that they are comfortable. A brave space takes it a step further where they're comfortable enough to step out and try something new. They're comfortable enough to take a chance. So that just gives it another additional layer to that safe space, but where they can be brave and try out new things at the same time.
Well, and I know that you mentioned in the book sort of the a particular book, the 13 Reasons Why by Jay Asher, and this book actually was in my collection when I got there. So I didn't make the difficult call as to whether or not we're going to have it in there, because my predecessor decided that it absolutely belonged in our collection. And along with some of our books which have content which would definitely spark some very strong emotions in our students. And I think that we are in a perfectly positioned to make sure that those conversations that come with introducing our students to sometimes edgy books and books which introduce ideas which the students have an option. These are all independent reading. This is choice reading. And, these are opportunities for the students to see themselves in the stories and the friends in the stories, and to really sort of explore some of these concepts in a way that is safe. And we're being brave because we're also providing all of this for them, but we're also those specialists who are going to be able to connect students with the content which they probably would find most useful to them at the time. And, it's an obligation, it's a privilege, it's a responsibility, but it's one that really does help us connect with our students. I think what strikes me as so valuable in Chapter 6 is that you systematically and very thoroughly go through issues that our students have struggled with or lived with. Here's a good example: sensory processing and integration. Those kinds of things that our students might be working with. Students who have color vision deficiencies. I became very aware of this because I used color coding on my genreification and instantly realized that I had students who could not tell which color was the green one. I had stickers that my students couldn't, the red and the green. I'm married to somebody who's red-green colorblind, and I forgot that when you use color stickers to genreify your collection, because it's the stickers you had in your drawer, all of a sudden, if I had read page 142 of your book about what are some things we need to remember when we're working with students who have color vision deficiencies. So the first thing I ask is, are any of you color deficient? Do any of you have any issues with color blindness? Because I will apologize right now, because mystery is green and red is realistic fiction.
Yeah, so you just hit on what actually started this whole thing. So my dissertation was about what school librarians know and believe about students with color vision deficiencies and how they use color in the library. That was my dissertation. So I actually did write a whole book about that. Nobody really wants to read that book, but I did write a whole book about it. And that was one of the pieces that really started the whole thing. Both of my twins have color vision deficiencies. Both of my brothers have color vision deficiencies. My brothers did not know it until they were young adults. Because why would you know that what you see looks different from what somebody else sees? You've always seen an apple this way. So why would you know it was any different? We knew because my brothers, we knew that I then probably carried the gene and could pass it down to our children. Our older son does not have color vision deficiencies, but our twins do. So it's always been something that I've been aware of. But still, my brother brought me a box of macarons and he said, "Which one do you want?" And I said, "The green one." And he just looked at me like, "Seriously? You tell me the green one?" Like, "Oh, yeah, sorry about that." And then we used our kids as guinea pigs all the time. So I think I tell the story in the book of seeing a rainbow and asking them how many colors they saw in the rainbow. And both of them said 2. These are the colors I see. And I said, "Okay, what do you see above this color?" And they said, sky. I'm like, "Okay, good to know." Because that was a really pretty rainbow, just so you know. One of my brothers, I asked him what fall looked like, and he said, "Well, pretty much like the rest of the year, and then all the leaves fall off the trees, so I know it's almost winter." I don't think about it because I'm part of the 90% of the world that sees colors what I think is the way everybody sees it. So absolutely, I use color to organize things for myself, but I need to be aware of providing other ways of getting the information. If that color is just to look pretty, that's fine. But if that color is giving information, there needs to be another way for people to get that information. So that's kind of what started this whole chapter 6, really what started this whole book. And then it just kind of bloomed from there. But what started it was, all right, what are other things that we might not think of or that we might not notice? What are those hidden things, which is where this hidden needs and talents phrase came from? Things that we don't see when they walk in the door of the library. And in chapter 6, I have a couple categories. I have hidden needs and talents, things that you probably don't see when they walk in, like you might not see their housing situation when they walk in the library. I remember one student who I came from a high income family, but she also rarely saw her parents. So without knowing that student, I wouldn't have known that was going on, and certainly not when she walked in the doors of the library by looking at her. Some of the other conditions, I don't know what to call them. I mean, they're not necessarily disabilities. Color vision deficiency is not a disability. It's a condition that does affect what your everyday life in one way or another. But then there are also some things that might not be hidden. And in that section, I include deaf and hard of hearing, and I include vision impairments and blindness. You might notice that when they walk in, but you might not notice how it might affect them. And then I included a section on chronic or long-term illnesses and conditions. And some interesting ones in there too, things that you might not have thought about, some that you do think about.
We as educators need to make sure that we are doing our best to address and support all of our students. And, thankfully we work with teams, our team of specialists, to be able to make sure that we are on the same page when it comes to the information as we are learning it, as we are becoming more and more aware of what's going on. We can better support our students and the needs that they have. I felt like your book did a really good job of filling in some of the gaps, not just the gaps in my own professional learning, but also just was an important reminder that I could not make assumptions about my students. And I do have access to ways to making sure that I am a better professional working in that partnership with other specialists. And so I just felt like I was part of a much bigger group of people making sure that our students feel supported every day. And what a pleasure and an opportunity that we have every day to work with the professionals who support those students as well. So we are perfectly positioned to be this amazing source of support to our entire school community. Karla Collins, I am so grateful that you were able to share this amazing book with me. Thank you, Bloomsbury, for providing a book so I could appreciate it for all the things that you're sharing with us today. Would you let listeners know how best we can connect with you if we had questions about the book that you wrote?
The best way to contact me is with my work email, collinskb@longwood.edu.
Karla, I'm so grateful. Thank you very much. This book is one of those ones that I'm going to be recommending to our professional reading club when we read another professional book. And it is really one of those opportunities for us to do better, especially for those of us who aren't going back to graduate school anytime soon. This is another opportunity for us to go, you want to make sure that you are well informed on the people who are supporting the students we work with every day. Karla Collins, thank you so much. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of the school year.
Thank you, Amy. You too. I appreciate your time.
Friends, if you found this episode helpful, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. Be sure to follow on your favorite podcatcher so you'll never miss an episode. And if you really like listening today, consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews help others find us. Don't forget you can order Karla's book and receive 20% off using the code UNITED20. See the link in today's show notes. If you're curious to know how often your state or country has been featured on the podcast, simply click on the link which can be found in our show notes. Search title, author, state, and country, and do a Command F search. I hope this is the year you consider being a guest on the show. Please visit the FAQs in every episode and you'll realize just how easy it is. We all have something to share. Make 2026 your time to shine. The topic of our next episode is student privacy and my conversation with Law for Librarians trainer, Heather Horner. I hope you will tune in.